Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Broadcast Club. I am Ange Time.
I am Nakanashi.
And I'm Rallina Tricolor.
The Broadcast Club is a visual novel oriented podcast. Every episode, we plan on having a mix of things. For one, we're going to talk about the latest visual novel related news. We will also have a different discussion topic for each episode. So the general idea for this podcast is to keep all you viewers informed, but also keep you guys hopefully entertained. And for each episode, we plan to have a different guest with us talk about the current episode's topic. Our topic for today is English visual novels, and to talk about it with us, we have brought on Nai, who is developing the upcoming When the Shutter Stops. Hello, Nai. How are you doing today?
Hey, Ange, how you doing? Thanks for having me here.
So, Nai, can you tell us a little bit more about When the Shutter Stops?
Sure, no problem. No, so When the Shutter Stops is about a former child detective that grows up and has her arch nemesis released from jail. It's a bit of a mystery, drama, sort of thriller visual novel that we've been working on for the past year and a half. It's coming together. It's looking pretty good. Yeah, it's been kind of a labor of love for us. We've been putting a lot of time and effort into it, and we're bringing in a lot of people from the outside to help us create a visual novel experience more on par with some of the more Japanese visual novels that you see around.
Have you drawn inspiration from any particular sources in this?
From a lot of different places. I'm a huge fan of mystery and romance novels.
Perfect.
So we have those, but I also draw a lot from other visual novels. I'm a huge fan of the Ace Attorney series, huge fan of Steins Gate. So I think people who have maybe been familiar with those, who play When the Shutter Stops, will probably see some of the influences, both from the more lighthearted comedic parts. You might see some Ace Attorney in there. From the mechanics and more of the drama-oriented things, you might see some of the Steins Gate inspirations there. And we also draw other features that were unique to the Ace Attorney and Steins Gate visual novels that I think people will recognize as something familiar, and hopefully will really appreciate how we took our own personal spin on it. So
cool. That actually sounds really neat.
How would you say the progress on the project is going?
It's been a little mixed. We had a lot of progress early on. About a year and a half ago, this began as a game jam submission to a competition that we were in, and we worked on it for a solid 2 or 3 months afterwards, and then we had some life issues come up, and we kind of stopped working on it for quite a bit, and then actually we got involved in a House of Fun game, which is a little role-playing thing that actually sparked a lot of the yeah. I hear you're laughing there. But it sparked a lot of inspiration when we redid one of the characters in order for me to play as that particular character, and it really kind of kicked us off again. So it's going really well now. We've pretty much full steam ahead. We've got a little hiccups in some of our asset production pipelines, but we're looking maybe this fall for a kickstart. We should have a demo hopefully before that.
That'll be nice.
Ideally before that.
Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to it. It's the kind of project that if you see, at least I've seen talked about on the, either in devtalk on the Discord server, on questions threads, or in the VN subreddit in general. So it's the kind of thing where I've been like, kind of like watching from arm's length, but at the same time, I'm definitely excited to see like the final product once it's there. So.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of pieces of this as you're working on it, because I sit in devtalk a lot, but I don't know exactly how it all fits together yet. So I'm also really excited to see that.
I appreciate that, and I'm glad you guys are looking forward to it. That really means a lot to me, actually.
You said mystery, you said romance. Like, I don't really need much more than that. I'm kind of sold.
Yeah, I mean, that ticks Rallina's boxes right there. So
we're done
good
here.
To go.
I think it's gonna be. I don't know what kind of mysteries you read, but I know a lot of people really like the Umineko series.
You don't say.
Type of, yeah, I don't say. But I don't think it's going to be in that vein as quite as much as it is closer to a whodunit sort of deal.
Yeah,
it's going to be definitely closer to the Ace Attorney style of mystery, where you're trying to figure out what's going on and what really happened, and not so much a what in the hell is going on and why is everyone dying sort of mystery.
So are you looking to make it more of the player is interacting with the mystery directly, or is it more like a sit back and I'm going to theorize what it is while your protagonist goes through to solve the mystery themselves?
It's actually both. One of the things that we're looking to offer in our visual novel is both an interactive mode where you can play as Priscilla, which is our heroine, and basically take her shoes in the investigation. You can actually look through crime scenes. You can interrogate people. There's an interrogation system that we're building up from scratch that's based off of some other games you may be familiar with, like LA Noire. So you have that one element to it, and there's also a story mode, which you could read exclusively as a visual novel. These little interaction, you basically just follow in Priscilla's footsteps in that particular mode. So we're hoping to offer both.
That's actually a pretty interesting take on a mystery, because you usually find people either go hard one way or the other, which ends up being the incredibly frustrating mini games in Danganronpa, for example, which kind of get in the way of a little bit of some of the story going on, or you just end up having the mystery story where it's like there's not really the feeling of accomplishment of having solved it, because you're just sort of waiting for the theories to be confirmed by the protagonist.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that frustrates me with really any mystery. It's not just mysteries you might see in visual novels, but mysteries you see in other games where you're kind of just being strung. If you hold control to get the answer, that's kind of a problem to me. I don't really like that. So it is still a pure visual novel in essence, at least. It's you will have choices you have to make regardless of whatever mode you take. If you take the interactive mode, you get to play a little bit more. There's some point and click mini games. They're not super intensive. They're more like scraping the crime scene, finding clues, and then making a deduction. Whereas in the story mode, you still have the visual novel elements where you take specific choices on routes and such. So, including things like who you partner up with, who you're friends with, who you're not friends with, whether or not you want to have sex with that cute girl, etc. So,
You can't forget that part.
Well, it is. We're still debating extremely heavily on whether or not we're going to have explicit content, but romance is absolutely a part of it. I could not write a romance story with this character without her, falling in love with someone or hating someone to death. So yeah, we're definitely going to have that aspect. We're not sure whether or not we're going to do anything naughty with it. So
I think it's a whole other topic, honestly.
Yeah, it really is another topic. I could spend an hour talking about just that. Let's not do that.
Yeah, that's fine. We don't have to touch on that too much here.
Touching jokes.
Please.
I think with that,
thanks for having me here, guys.
All right. Thank you, Nye, for sharing that little bit about when the shutter stops. To dive into our general discussion for today, which is English visual novels as a whole, I want to talk about the stigma surrounding English visual novels compared to visual novels that are developed in Japan. I know there's a lot of people in the visual novel community that just refuse to read English visual novels because of the quality, what people say, the type of content, or maybe they just make comparisons to other Japanese visual novels. So what do you guys think about this?
I think it's a kind of a complicated problem. There's a weird paradox that people learn where the average person, I think, who reads visual novels probably knows a couple of visual novels. I assume basically everyone who's in the community read Katawa Shoujo, somehow read visual novels and never heard of Katawa Shoujo. I have no idea what you're doing in this medium. It's impossible to avoid any sort of information about it. However, past that one, the popularity just plummets almost immediately, which I think it ends up being sort of there's a gateway VN, and then it's almost kind of a popular thing to be like, oh man, I remember when I was new to the community, new to the culture, I used to think Katawa Shoujo was good, which I think people sort of end up in that state, which is a bit odd to my mind.
Yeah, I definitely see that sentiment a lot. I guess me personally, I'm an odd case where Katawa Shoujo was actually not one of the first visual novels I read. It was probably my 10th or my 15th or whatever. But I still enjoyed it, even though all the visual novels I read beforehand were originally made in Japan. So I'll admit, outside of Katawa Shoujo, I haven't really checked out any other English visual novels, so I can't really have a strong opinion either way. But as far as Katawa Shoujo goes, I'm totally cool with it. I like it.
I mean, the thing with Katawa Shoujo too is that it's actually very close in structure to what your standard sort of Japanese visual novel is. So it's really easy. It's really easily accessible to go back to if you didn't read it at the very beginning, or to transition into reading translated titles.
And I think that ends up being an interesting case too, just because Katawa Shoujo is one of those things where you see it talked about outside the VN community as well. Like I knew what Katawa Shoujo was long before I really understood what a visual novel was, or that there was this whole culture of them. It was like, oh, that's that 4chan dating sim that they got made, right? Like people see people talking about it like on the game subreddit, like in other communities.
That's that
because
game that should date the crippled girls.
Exactly, right. But it has this mainstream popularity that other English visual novels really don't seem to have.
Yeah, for sure. Nai, as a English visual novel developer, like, what are some of your thoughts on this Stigma?
Well, I'm not going to win a lot of tests regarding this, but I think most of the stigmas revolving around English visual novels are probably justified. The truth of the matter is, but out here in the West and really outside of Japan, we have a lot of novice creators, we have a lot of amateurs, hobbyists, and such. Creating visual novels and other visual novel quote unquote experiences that they're not well crafted. A lot of them are made as hobby projects or as for each and every one of us just piles in and creates whatever. But I mean, in terms of Katawa Shoujo, like you get a lot of people who are saying, yeah, this isn't that great. You have to remember this was made by people that were fans of the medium and didn't have a ton of professional training regarding the medium. That if you talk to them now, yeah, and now they do. A lot of them continued working on it, but I mean, at the time, these were not people who were they were not professionals in their field, and so it's not really surprising to hear that people are like, "Oh, Katawa Shoujo." I remember when I thought that was good. Well, yeah, I mean, you read something made by a bunch of amateurs, and it's mean to say because at the time they were, but now they're not.
Because I think one of the things is that like the place we end up in with as well is that the people that are translating Japanese visual novels are the de facto gatekeepers of what media we can consume. So for all of the hobbyist, lower quality, casually made visual novels, I'm sure there are equally many terrible hobbyist made VNs in Japan, but the difference is that there are obviously going to be a few good VNs in either of those piles. It's just that we see the entire pile of English visual novels that have been made by amateurs, whereas only the Tsukihime, Fate Stay Night, When They Cry series get translated, and so we see the cream of the crop of the hobbyist VNs.
Yeah, well, the doujin scene over in Japan is full of just wide levels of quality, and some of the bad over there is worse than you can possibly imagine.
Well, I want to just bring this up because you mentioned it. Rallina, you said that you see all of the VNs that that come out, and let me I'm saying you see all of them. You see bad. Honestly, though, discovery wise, I mean, one of the biggest problems that EVNs have in general is even if they're good, the discovery is really poor on them. I've read a couple of visual novels, and let me ask you guys this: have you ever heard of Hustle Cat by any chance?
Nope.
Not I.
Okay. Hustle Cat is a English visual novel. It was actually created by Casey. She's in devtalk with this. It's one of the better English visual novels that was created in recent history. It is a quasi otome / dating sort of deal. You play as a gentleman and or a man. I'm not really sure what the gender is because it's left ambiguous. And but the dialogue is some of the best dialogue I've read in visual novels, period. I mean, I'm not just talking English visual novels. I mean, the dialogue is actually really fantastic, and it composes most of the visual novel. But this is a really good visual novel. I mean, if I had to rank this one among all of the Japanese visual novels I've read, I mean, we're talking a solid 7 out of 10, and that's pretty good for an English visual novel, because with that stigma involved, it's, I mean, like I've been asking around the community, Katawa Shoujo usually isn't ranked anything more above a 5, and all of everything combined. So discovery in general, though, for English visual novels is really.
Yeah, I think it's really funny that you bring that up too, because I had done a little bit of research, because I admit that while I say you see all of it, really I don't see all of it. There was a list I saw compiled in like 2014. I was on Foo Novel of notable OELVNs. Like, okay, let's go to the list here. There's like 30 on this list. I had heard of 6. Half of those were Christine Love VNs. Of the ones on the list, I had played 2, Katawa Shoujo and Long Live the Queen. I think there is a wealth of them that we have access to, but it is very hard to find actual recommendations or information on these things, partly because I think, one, discovery is bad. You have the mess that is Steam Greenlight and trying to find anything quality in there. But also I think part of the point of the stigma is also because people think, oh, English visual novels not good, they don't put in the effort to look for them, to recommend them, to spread this information in the same way where, if you give someone, if someone new comes into a community and they ask for a list of recommendations for visual novels, everything they're going to say is Japanese visual novels. I highly doubt people are going to recommend a single English visual novel other than Katawa Shoujo.
Right, and there's another thing, and I want to add to that too. I mean, those are 2 factors in it, of course, but the stigma does more than just dissuade people from sharing visual novels that they've read or visual novels that they've heard of. It also prevents developers from sharing their own visual novels. And I mean, I've been on a very large number of community forums for visual novels over the years, and and of course our home is our visual novels, and I spend quite a lot of time there, and even I'm afraid to put stuff out about my own VN there. I've been there for almost 2 years now, regular poster, and when I talk to other developers who make visual novels in English, they don't want to go there. They know that people don't like English visual novels there, and it's gotten to the point where they're afraid to put it there because they're just going to get flamed off the forums or put off. And it's part of my passion about devtalk, and I mean, we'll probably talk about that more later, is bringing these visual novel developers back into the light, bring these people, and maybe even shielding them a little bit from the fire that they get from these posts. Most of I bring these developers into devtalk so that I can start these English visual novel discussions. And I mean, hell, just recently we had Alpha's Adventures and The Falconers picked up by Sakai Project, both of which are in devtalk. And I don't know if you guys have heard of these visual novels, but they're being produced by English visual novel developers who at the time were only in Limasoft, or in case of Alpha's Adventures, was also on 4chan. So I mean, they could have gotten out, of course, in some other way, but that stigma really prevents people from sharing their visual novels. Even if they're really high quality.
Yeah, I think another thing that I'm sort of curious about, and curious for what you all have to say about, is it doesn't seem like there's that far of a line from some of the traditions in Western gaming and visual novels. You have things, your point, like adventure games. You've got, there's the recent rise of things like people call walking simulators, like Gone Home, or something like To the Moon, which is very similar to, I feel like, a visual novel. But I think there's like a weird thing there where it's like there's only really a couple of steps away from a like an adventure game and a VN. And a lot of people in the gaming community really say, oh, I really love these fantastic story-rich games, something like Planescape Torment, which is almost more book than game. But at the same time, the Western popularity of visual novels seems to be very low, but it seems like there's an opportunity there for Western culture influenced Western style visual novels telling that kind of story. And I'm just kind of curious if you guys have noticed like a similar link or have other thoughts on that.
Well, I know this is something you've thought about a lot, Nye, about how to expand the OELVN or EVN audience, because there are a lot of people who like these kinds of games. So, sorry, I cut you off as you were starting to say. So
yeah, like it's okay. No, we one of the things that I specialize in is something that a lot of developers don't pick up, is business and marketing. I even held a talk on this particular topic on not this particular topic, but on marketing in general during the visual conference, not what in January, in the middle of January. And one of the things that that we're passionate about is expanding the audience for it. And I mean, the stigma kind of goes both ways, because if we're talking about visual novels in terms of reaching out to other people, visual novels, I mean, if I were to say porn slideshow, a lot of you would laugh and be like, yeah, I know what he's talking about.
Yeah, that thing.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, I still know what that is. Yeah.
Yeah, but you guys understand what I'm referring to. And the stigma goes both ways. One of the things that's really drawing visual novels back from reaching a larger audience is that it's largely regarded as smut. And it's not. I don't agree with it, because I've read things like Steins Gate and fallen in love with it. I love Higurashi. I mean, these are not visual novels that are smut. These are visual novels that are completely different stories. They're not smut. Like convincing other people of that visual novels aren't smut outside of the visual novel community, it's actually a really hard thing to do. They see the cute anime girls and they think, oh, well, I've seen this before. This is one of those Chinese port slideshow things. And it's like I said, the stigma goes both ways. And reaching out to other audiences with that in mind, it's kind of really, really hard to convince people who are already knowledgeable about them. So I think what a lot of us want to do is reach out to audiences who have never heard of visual novels before, and ideally change that perception of what visual novels are. And that's where a lot of EVNs have a massive opportunity, because a lot of the EVN developers that I know of want just to tell stories. They don't want to do a lot of sex, or do a lot of romance heavy things. They just want to tell stories. And I think that EVNs play a vital role in the survival of all visual novels, not just their own EVNs. So
Yeah, I think that actually leads to sort of something I've been thinking about, is that I've read through a lot of discussions on the matter, obviously, and something I see a lot of is that people complain about EVNs for trying too hard to be Japanese, which I think is actually a really funny complaint to make in the heavily Japanese VN focused communities, because while it's not going to work well if you try to be Japanese and fail, obviously. At the same time, it seems like the core community of VN readers right now is people who enjoy Japanese media, Japanese culture, these sorts of styles and themes. And so I think your point of trying to expand to the English community that has never seen visual novels, that sees, oh, it's a way to read a story or to experience, the story with visuals and audio and possibly voice acting. I think that's a good point to make, because while there are obviously plenty of people who enjoy both Western media and Japanese media, I think the current VN community is really, really heavily biased towards people who enjoy Japanese media.
Yeah, and to be perfectly honest with you, like, I mean, one of the things that a lot of they do what a lot of people suggested. They say, hey, why don't you go look at a visual novel that does well and then try to do something similar. They try to, I mean, they're obviously catering, but I mean, there's a certain level of authenticity to it that kind of makes it either feel cheap or staged. And I think a lot of that shows in the production of visual novels outside of places where these people are native to, or where their life experiences have been. So part of it, I understand the frustration, but a lot of EVN developers are just trying to create something that people want to read. And they know that people love reading Japanese visuals. So it makes sense as to why their entire cast is named with Japanese names, even though they're in some American high school. Like I understand the motivation behind it and the thought process behind it. I don't agree with the execution half the time, more than half the time, but like I understand why it exists and why it's there. And I'm not necessarily saying it needs to change, but we need to get better about lying about it at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely room for both. I mean, I would like to see some more Western style themes. Like I read recently The House in Fata Morgana, which is it's a Japanese visual novel, obviously, and it has some of the Japanese tropes. But I found it was interesting in that it felt more like a Western style culture. There was a lot of things there that really struck me as being different from the standard VN tropes, and I think there's a market for that. I mean, I know unfortunately things like Fata don't sell as well as the Sakura series or other things on Manga Gamer that are more pandering, But at the same time, I think there's space for it. I think there are good stories to tell regardless of what sort of cultural influences you draw from. And the trick is to write what you know, right? I think we're going to get higher quality, more authentic stories if people are trying to write what they understand rather than attempting to fit into this default paradigm of, oh, everything has to be Japanese all the time.
Well, the thing with the reason people write things that have to be Japanese all the time is just like you were saying, is that that's what most of the community that I see at least enjoys. And so that's what they want. And so there's a certain degree of needing to write for your audience. You just have to do it well, which is I think what fails to happen for some EVN devs.
Absolutely, and I think what EVN developers really need to do. I mean, it's fine to write about if you have experience with the Japanese culture, then absolutely, then you can probably write it well. But I think one of the things that we should try to do and understand more is why people are attracted to the Japanese culture. It's not necessarily that Japanese is somehow better, but I mean, people love foreign and new worlds, and for a lot of Americans, a lot of Europeans who have never been step foot inside of Japan, they see these stories about Japan, and it's so foreign, it's so interesting to them. This is new world to them, and I think if we were to take our understanding about what draws people to Japanese culture and implement it in our own visual novels. I mean, one of the things that I'm doing with When the Shutter Stops is that I'm taking Philadelphia culture and I'm showing the highlights of it. It's not going to be just a story where, oh, hey, this is a detective mystery thing. There's also going to be Philadelphia life in it. There's going to be, life about the streets of Philadelphia. There's going to be, for the food, the culture, the people, that sort of thing. And it's going to build an experience that most people are going to be foreign to, because most people, again, haven't stepped a foot inside of Philadelphia. And it's a very different place than where most people live, unless you live in Philadelphia, which point. Anyway, but I think it's really important to not only understand that people like Japanese culture, but to understand why they like it, and implementing something like that from our own life experiences. I think that's something EVN does.
I think what you're saying about that, like, really actually, it sounds like what you want to make sure you do is to really paint a somewhat accurate, at least, picture of Philadelphia as your setting. And that's what when I was saying, that sometimes EVN devs do that badly if they set it in Japan, is that they don't paint a convincing picture of that. Whereas, like, if you've got a convincing picture of Philly for your setting, and so it doesn't matter where your setting is, as long as it's actually very convincing, I think, for me.
It also needs to be interesting too. Like, you don't want to do a podunk America and have nothing but trees in your backgrounds.
Are you sure? I mean, podunk America is actually sort of where I live.
Yeah, I know. But and I mean, I think engaging, I wrote not engaging, but rather just kind of drawing from life experiences from actually culturally interesting places and themes is probably what we need to do. And actually, one of the funny things that I'm doing with there's a lot of graffiti art in Philadelphia. I don't know if you guys know this about cities, but there's a lot of graffiti. Anyway, but graffiti in Philadelphia, though, it's a life of its own. I don't know if any of you have ever seen it, but
I've been.
There's tons and tons of it, and a lot of it's beautiful. I mean, a lot of it are wall mural style of graffiti. These graffiti artists are magnificently talented at what they're doing, and one of the things that I want to do with our visual novels when we take it to Kickstarter is offer a reward for people to make their own graffiti to put in the city, in some of the scenes.
That'd be really cool, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about that whole is the life behind it, and I think that a lot of people will be excited to also kind of be a part of it and also see what graffiti can do. So anyway, that's just a cultural thing. Sorry.
No, I actually think your point is great, and I mean, obviously you'll see how well, hopefully, your visual novel does well, and maybe the idea of you like trying to understand what your audience actually wants, like in addition to what you guys want to do, is important for potential other English visual novel developers to actually do when they're doing their own work. Like, they can't just go, oh, well, I like Japanese anime, and I want to create an English visual novel that's kind of similar to that, but like with my own characters. I mean, I think they should like paint like maybe. I mean, obviously it's subjective what they want to do, but I like your idea of, well, Japan, like people are interested in these Japanese visual novels because Japan's like a foreign thing, but in your case, you're like trying to say, hey, this is what Philadelphia is like. I'm gonna try to like write out the atmosphere and put all these details and like have the main characters or whatever interact with Philadelphia in a way so people can almost live it in a way. But I mean, of course, it doesn't have to be based on like a real place per se. Like it could be like a really cool fantasy world with like unique things about it. It's just how you sell the characters and the atmosphere and all that stuff. So
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Nye, when can we expect to read Go Go PA, my first trip to Pennsylvania?
I don't know, but I am definitely going to make a PA of it. One of the things that we've seen in a lot of visual novels too is the food segments, right? I mean, everyone has seen food in a visual novel, right?
Oh, I love food
that's
in
not
visual
just me.
novels. Most people hate it, but I love it. What are you guys talking about?
Well, I've read enough shrimp ball scenes to last me a lifetime, but and that's actually something we're doing with Philadelphia because everyone knows. Well, most Americans know about Philadelphia cheesesteaks.
Yeah.
PA Dutch scrapple, like scrapple is a big thing up here. Yep. People have no idea exists. Pork roll, stuff like that. There's a lot of like culturally relevant stuff that's local to only here. Most people never hear about it. And I think that maybe taking a spin on it that way, just to expose people to the culture and the food and such. I think it's an interesting angle to take, and I'm hoping it's going to work out. I've done a lot of research on how this works, and I'm betting my money on it. So
Oh, well, I'm sure all that research will pay off for you in the end. So one of the other big topics that I wanted to bring up was the fact that just a few days ago, Steam announced that they're replacing Greenlight with something called Steam Direct, which will affect the way that English visual novel developers will be able to publish their visual novels on Steam, which is become a pretty big platform for people to read visual novels legally these days. What are you guys' thoughts on this new Steam Direct?
To me, what Steam Direct seems to be doing is just kind of more or less raising the bar, if you will, because it's not so easy to get anything on Steam. Like Greenlight is, I think, $100 to get onto Greenlight, and then you need enough people to say, yes, I want this to hit Steam, and you're good to go, more or less, because Steam at some point kind of stopped. I think they did some amount of vetting themselves, but not like they used to for content. So from a purely consumer standpoint, I think we'll see a rise in quality of the stuff that gets on there, but I can acknowledge it's definitely going to be an issue for the people who are actually making VNs.
So I guess, before anything, looks like with Steam Direct, there's not too many details out just yet, but it does seem like they're basically going to raise the dollar limit or the dollar minimum you need to actually get a visual novel published on Steam, which on one hand, it will ensure like more quality visual novels are being published on there as opposed to random other stuff that gets published on there. But on the other hand, could be a problem if developers are like short on funds. Like what if like they really want to publish visual novel, but with these potentially high prices, maybe they might have to put it off and maybe save a little bit. What are you guys' thoughts about that?
Well, both you and Knock, you're saying that there's going to be more better visual novels on Steam, and as a result of this change, and that's really not true. You're not going to see more better visual novels; you're just going to see less bad ones. And it's an important distinction because this is improving quality at the cost of volume, which makes sense. It's a good call, I think, in most parts, because it does a lot of culling for us that I think I believe Steam viewers, are really the Steam audience, really wants. But at the same time, as a developer, it's caused a bit of anxiety, because we're going to need this extra amount of cash, whether it's $100, which is $100 is usually negligible, because like that's what Stream Greenlight was before. We're talking figures upwards of 5,000, which would destroy most English visual novel devs.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it would be nearly impossible for me to get mine on Steam at the $5,000 price point. That's almost half of my budget for the entire visual novel. It's almost the entire budget for our music section of it. So that's, if you look at any of the visual novel Kickstarters that are around, I mean, add $5,000 to any of their numbers, and you'll see that most of them don't hit their goal anymore. This is a very niche, very small thing, and maybe if we expand the audience more and get more readership from other places like comics, manga, or some other audience type, then maybe that would be fine. But at the current environment for English visual novels, if it's too much, it's going to kill them. Pretty much.
I feel like when Steam mentioned they had surveyed like people, publishers and stuff, I feel like the 5,000 number was like they surveyed AAA dev and they just gave a huge highball number on that one. I really hope it doesn't end up that high, because I think that like you said, it's going to kill a lot of projects. But I really do think something needs to be done. I'm actually on Steam Greenlight right now, and man, it's like, well, first off, I think it's kind of funny they mentioned visual novels explicitly in the blog post about it. You actually can't like search on visual novel tags, which is unfortunate. But I think this gets sort of back to the point of, as Naya, you were saying, it's not about there being more high quality VNs on Steam because of this. It's that the discovery becomes easier, and I think that's one of the as you're saying, one of the big problems for the success of EVNs is that it's hard to find out what a good what looks like a good VN, and where can I find these here. And so I would like to believe that, hopefully with some of the filtering done for us, and I don't know that this is going to be necessarily the immediate best solution, but it does seem to put something in some roadblock in front of the problem to try to slow things down a bit here. But like right now, I don't feel really confident browsing VNs on Steam. Steam is not a place I go to look for VNs, because I know that things like Sakura can get through and other things can get through, where it's like, realistically, I'm going to have much better luck either talking to people that I know, checking VNDB, searching for other communities. But when I think of places to go find new VNs, Steam is just not one of them.
I mean, not to be the defender here, but things like Sakura are going to get on Steam no matter what they do. They've got a nice set. They've got a really decent amount of money coming in already, and so this is not going to be a problem for them. Winged Cloud is doing their thing, and they're doing it well for who they're selling to. So this is not going to remove the Sakura series.
Sakura is going nowhere.
It was money. Excuse me, it was one example of what I was sort of getting at, is that there's the sort of trashy, pandering, low effort. The editing in those. I've seen all the screenshots in one of your reading posts, Snack. All of the. You would think it was a poorly translated game, not a game that was written in English first.
Well, one of my concerns with Direct is that there are free visual novels on Steam, and we had this big discussion in devtalk over it a while back. But there's visual novels like Sepia Tears, which is absolutely amateur grade, but it's actually not too bad. We're not talking. It's not going to outsell. Well, nothing's going to outsell Capital Shoujo, because Capital Shoujo doesn't sell anything, but. It's actually not a bad visual novel, and it makes a lot of industry referential statements, and it's actually kind of cute. It's a little romance story, and it's free, but it would not live there with a $5,000 or even $1,000 price tag, because the dev is extremely not having a lot of money. So it's. And that's the kind of the concern, is that the free stuff is definitely going to stop happening, which a lot of people probably don't care about, because it seems like a lot of people didn't know to begin with. So maybe that's not such a bad thing. Still, it's a concern.
Yeah, I think there's a small number of few things, but I think there's some psychology stuff behind the idea of a free VN that's probably not super quality, but like a $15-$20 VN that's there's certainly a certain a belief that people have that having to pay for something means it probably has quality behind it. Which
actually I could talk for several hours on pricing strategies. Based on price perception. It's actually better to sell your visual novel for $20 than it is to sell it for $5 and expect more people to buy it. Like, it's better to sell it for $20 and then discount it to 15 than it is to just have it at 15, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. No, it totally
because
does.
it's a perception of quality. There's an entire game about pricing, and I'll talk about it some other time if you want. But,
I mean, I would be very reticent, for example, to just go look at free VNs on Steam without someone having recommended me one.
Well, check out Sepia Tears. It's not super long. There you go. There's one. It's not the best thing in the world, but like if you're gonna waste a couple hours, it's it's worth a look.
But I think I mean, at least for me, that's where a lot of my discovery of VNs comes from is from recommendation, and I think that does create a bit of it's like a chicken and egg problem for EVNs. Is that I don't know if there are other people like me. I do know obviously people in the community tend to be somewhat close. Like, I feel like there's a lot of camaraderie that the VN community has, given that it's kind of a small community where a lot of people know each other or people talk to each other about VNs a lot more so than a lot of other communities I'm a part of. And so I know that people talk about, they recommend VNs. And so I think there's a, like I said, bit of a chicken and egg problem there of, well, if no one's recommending EVNs, then no one's reading them. But if no one's reading them, then no one's there to recommend them. And I think that ideally something, something in, and I think that's why now you've got a great idea with trying to expand the audience and sort of branch out from the traditional core, because I think that will feed back if people start talking about these things.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing that needs to happen is for things to pick up more, is that people do need to start talking about it a little more than they do, or at least positively more than they do, because like 95% of what I read is recommendation. Like I've read a couple things on a whim, and I've had mixed experiences with that. So generally I want to check out something that somebody else has read already and said, hey, this is pretty good.
And this is actually isn't really that unique to visual novels either. Like, visual novels are a very particular medium where they share a lot of features that other mediums have. The whole recommendation thing, going from user to user and such like that, that's very reminiscent of books. A lot of people, when they hear about books, they don't buy books because they're being advertised books half the time. There's not a whole lot of TV ads for books, and if there is, it's usually because it's attached to a movie that's being made. But most recommendations for books are done from person to person, and visual novels share that currently. Which is that going to stay? I don't know, but and that's something again that you see with books. It's not unique.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just like I said, I would like to see the scene growing. I think that there's like I said, there's a lot of angles to approach this problem from.
The other thing I wanted to say was, it's important for EVN devs to branch out to other audiences, but we also need to continue to service the core audience, because without the core audience, we probably won't survive. So it's important that we do both. We have to reach out and we have to continue to understand the needs of the current audience. So
this is a hard balance to strike, I think. So
it is.
I certainly don't envy your position there.
Yeah, you want to make sure you're as a developer, as a writer, I'm sure you want to make sure you're writing the story you want to write and making the project you want to make, but at the same time, maybe the project you want to make isn't something that the community wants at all. So I don't like to use like the word pandering to a community or anything, but you kind of have to if you want to be successful.
I mean, I think it's a really common term in the VN community. Pandering is a huge part of this.
Yeah, I think it's not. I mean, pandering has a really negative connotation to it. It is absolutely, but that's also why I say service. I mean, I'm servicing customers when I make visual novels. That's why I use the word service. But because I mean, fan service is pandering. I mean, just hint. But anyway, but shit, I forgot what I was gonna say now.
Distracted by fan service.
Yeah, it's exactly.
That's
I was like, ooh, fan service, and then my mind just kind of wanders,
Yeah, no, it's gone now. Shoot. But what it out in post.
Let it all this out in post. It's fine.
One of the things that I talked about in the visual conference was doing experimentation with story ideas, which is I titled experimental marketing and paid attention anyway. I mean, we recently had a logline contest in the Our Visual Novels community, where we put up a bunch of ideas and voted and had people vote on it. And Neil was actually the one that won, which is Bob Emo, I think is what his Reddit name is. But and he wrote what he thought would be fun to read, which for a lot of devs doesn't work. It happened to work for him because he knows what other people like to read, and he also shares the same mindset. But if I were to write what I wanted to read, I'd read it.
Yeah, I was also a little surprised just to see, knowing how the community goes, that a shitpost wasn't the top winner. I was like, wait, there's like quality content? That sounds interesting.
Okay, so funny story about that contest. We had 39 submissions, and I limited it to 25. And almost every single one of the ones that I cut was a shitpost. It was deliberately trimming out.
That's good.
The ones that I know would probably win based off of an inside joke. And I just did that because, like, okay, yeah, whatever. It might work. If it's a massive inside joke, it might work in reality. But like our visual novel community does have its smaller inside jokes, which would probably have completely destroyed the votes.
Oh, speaking of communities, as we mentioned a few times earlier, there's a devtalk channel in the Our Visual Novels Discord that's actually moderated by Nye himself. Nye, would you like to tell us a little bit more about devtalk?
Not really, thanks.
Oh.
No, I will. devtalk is a bit of my baby. It's a little channel that we've gotten together that lets English visual novel developers kind of get into the community of our visual novels and kind of get around some of the stigmas that English visual novels have. And it's been a couple months now that I've really been pouring a lot of effort into it. And I'm bringing in developers from basically every place that I find that I believe that would be a good contribution to the community for other people. And one of the things that we do there that I think that if you're an English visual novelist and listening to this, I think you should come over and say hi and ask about the free lemonade. But we do a lot of skill sharing there. I talk about marketing a lot. I talk about writing a lot. I talk about structure and such. We have a lot of artists in the community who share feedback to other artists. We've got musicians and composers who both give advice and actually can work and help you out with your visual novel. And
I've seen a couple people get paired up with somebody in devtalk. They're looking for, I need this person to make something for me, and someone's like, oh, I do that actually, and they kind of go off and do a talk. I've seen a couple people like get paired up with composers.
Yeah, and we actually have an entire directory full of regulars that come into the channel at the top of the topic. So if you ever need a specific skill set, you can go through the directory and find people. I think one of the things that really makes devtalk stand out from other developer communities is that it's live feedback. There's always someone in it talking about something. A lot of the times it's shitpost, but we do also, I mean, we keep on topic quite often, and we talk about Kickstarter campaigns, and we talk about methods of building those. We talk about, what's the best way to approach it, what should be in your demo, et cetera, et cetera. And we do a lot of cross-talk about that. And devtalk's ultimate goal is to make EVNs better than what they are. It's to help EVN developers become professional EVN developers and, take something from a hobbyist level to a professional level, where maybe even you do this for, your living, something like that. So, and that's, one of our big goals there.
Mm-hmm. Something I actually like was I frequent the devtalk channel, even though I'm not a dev. And something I like a lot is that you guys are there's no really one person in there who is like, I mean, obviously you're the moderator who has the final say on things, but there's no one who's like significantly better established or anything than everyone else. So you're all kind of working together to bring up everything instead of one person being like, I'm doing all the work to help everybody or something like that. So it's much more of a community effort than whatever the alternative is, I guess.
Not community effort, right? But that's not to say we don't have like bigger names.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Ibi Himi comes in there a lot. She's one of the Sekai project developers. Renpai Tom, which if you don't know who Renpai Tom is, you're probably not making a visual novel. Renpai Tom, anyway, he hangs out in there sometimes. We occasionally ping him. A lot of people, even if they're not there regularly, are still accessible to there. I mean, we've got the Hustle Cat devs in there. We've got all kinds of different indie devs that are in there that have either been published before or have been working on games primarily. Bonesy's in there. He's been working with basically everyone in the industry, including people like the Made Mansion team and the Kama Sutra team, and he's working with Ebiskava, I think is how it's pronounced.
Mm-hmm.
We've got people from all walks. We've got people who are coming in 17, 18 years old, fresh out, want to learn how to make stuff. And that's fine. But we also have a lot of the other type too, which we have people who have been professionals, have been doing it for quite a long time and making quite a lot of money doing it. So, and yeah, it's been an honor to be the moderator for it. And I don't know what I did to deserve it, but damn.
Oh, cool. Well, devtalk sounds like a great place for visual novel devs to talk about their work and stuff. Before we finish up, we want to talk about some relevant news to the VN community that happened like in the rough last month or so. Obviously, we can't hear everything, but we at least want to cover what we consider like some of the most notable news. One of the biggest things and kind of a bit of controversy at the same time was the DS Ire Kickstarter. Even though there was like a lot of issues like with the PR team and some dead time of like no updates or whatnot, the Kickstarter did reach its goal, its base goal, as well as a Vita goal that a lot of people were clamoring for. Any of you guys interested in reading DS Ire?
Oh yeah, I backed that like immediately. I was super hyped for it, and then I was kind of scared watching the numbers come. Like that's not quite there yet. And they got a couple hours left, and then it sort of came through to the last minute. I think
is one
changing
of those that everyone kind of assumed was going to make it.
Yeah.
Like immediately, and then it sort of was really kind of slowly making its way there, and it did obviously in the end, but it was kind of scary for people who were just like, oh yeah, obviously DS is going to get funded. Psh, no question about it.
I think when they initially put the stretch goals out, I was really surprised. Like, I figured the Vita tier would be like the first one and not like after the art book. So I think changing those to be that the Vita was like the first thing you could get was a good decision, because they're definitely like, I think there's a silent crowd of Vita VN readers who actually really care about these things, because you see the Vita stretch goals get hit like fairly often for these things, and it is a really convenient platform for it too.
Yeah, I didn't back it myself, but I am interested in trying it out. I'll probably even get the Vita version like when it eventually gets released. All I know about it is it's like some kind of fantasy VN. Apparently, there's like Nazis or something related to it, if I'm not mistaken.
I wonder if it'll get censored here in Germany.
That was something they were talking about, like specifically in the Kickstarter stuff, was like, how do we release this in Germany, or what are we to do? And I don't actually know what they settled on for that, but it was something that they were already thinking of before it.
Good to know.
It was
that's not something I had considered before moving here. So,
incidentally, if no one had seen it, I did see just a couple days ago that they are actually completely done with the base translation of it, because it was being worked on well before the Kickstarter started. They just have to, I think, translate some of the 18 plus content, and then it's going to be good to roll through editing and all that other stuff. I think it's slated for May release, actually.
May release
so
for both parts.
It sounds like it's going to be on target. So that's what we're looking for. Sounds like, and I just know it. I'm not Foog. Never mind. I didn't jinx it. We're okay.
Well, speaking of Kickstarter, there's also the ever so popular Nekopara anime Kickstarter, which literally just ended a few days ago of this podcast recording. It got over 900,000 of its funding.
963.
Yes.
thousand.
Yes, that's the exact number.
Yeah.
Didn't quite reach their 1 million goal, but hey, 963,000 still pretty damn good number. People want those cat girls.
And the 800,000 stretch goal was a mini VN of mini cat girls. So there you go.
Yep. So in addition to that, some of the original goals were basically the Nekopara anime would get a 10-minute increase or so for each like 100,000.
Yeah,
so
that was kind of an interesting way they did that first stretch, because the original thing was, oh yeah, it's going to be 200K for a 20-minute OVA, but every 100,000 you go past that up to 600,000, we're going to extend it by 10 minutes. So of course we have an hour-long OVA coming now. I don't think anybody really didn't think that was going to happen because people love Nekopara.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys here actually read it. I mean, I like it. I mean, I'm not like super big on it, but I'll probably watch the anime. I didn't help kickstart this anime, but I'll
I've
probably
never
watch
bought
it.
into the hype. It's not why I read VNs.
I read the first one. It was cute.
Yeah, it's basically just there to be cutesy if you like cat girls. I mean, I'm not like super into cat girls, but I mean, a lot of people are like, you
It's
gotta
okay,
read it.
you're
It's like the
safe
most
here.
thing. Yeah, I guess suppose.
So you can admit your darkest secrets.
Now, did you guys happen to see the Neko Club Kickstarter that launched
No.
shortly after?
Yeah, it was only a couple days after the Nekopara OVA Kickstarter launched, right?
Yeah,
What is this?
Yeah, the Neko Club. There's a Neko Club EVN that came out on Kickstarter a couple days after the Nekopara OVA launched. We thought the timing was peculiar in devtalk because we follow Kickstarters and we were actually talking about the DS era Kickstarter basically every day during its run. And we also talked a little bit about Nekopara's, but we saw this other one called Neko Club that came shortly after Nekopara's OVA launch or AV launch. Sorry, whichever. It's one of the two. Anyway, so we saw this visual novel up there, and it actually looked kind of decent. And I know we were talking about decent EVNs and all that, and it takes a dark twist to the whole cutesy cat girl theme that we're seeing a lot because of Nekopara. And I was just wondering if anyone happened to see it around the same time that launched. Did any of you see it?
Yeah, I noticed it. I looked into it a little bit, and I hate to say it didn't leave like a super strong impression on me because it's not exactly what I generally look for when I'm looking for something to read. But it looked like it was going to do okay at what it is, I suppose. I guess I don't know if Rallina, you and Ange saw it.
No,
Nope.
it slipped under the radar for me.
Yeah, I think I only saw it because I was in devtalk.
Discoverability.
Exactly, right? This is how you spread the information.
Yeah, but anyway, it seems like it's taken a dark turn on the whole cat girl thing. It's already funded, so it's the window for backing is closed now. But it's got some really dramatic themes to it, and I think it could be pretty good. I don't know, it's something to keep our eyes on.
Cool.
Interesting. Yeah,
All right.
I'll keep my eye on that. I like I do like that kind of stuff if it suddenly turns dark. So
Oh, I thought you meant the cat girls.
well, that too, but but you made me say it now, so
Yeah, it's fine.
In other news, the Labyrinth of Grisaya, or Grisaya no Make-You 18 Plus, was finally released on Devtalk after over half a year from the all ages release and over a year from the original Grisaya release on Steam. So I mean, I don't know what was all the delays. I mean, the Sakai didn't really say. I mean, they said some things here and there, but we don't know the exact reason. But now it's released, so people can hopefully be happy with the next chapter of Grisaya, which is a pretty big visual novel series here on the West.
I know some of the things that people were saying that was an issue with, as far as time and expediency was concerned with that, is that the all ages versions are actually based on the Vita versions of the Grisaya VNs, which did not have any adult content at all. And so when they went back, they actually had to completely get into a new what have you? What's the word I'm looking for?
Engine. New
Engine. Thank you. Yeah, they
gotcha.
had to get into a totally different engine to insert everything they had already done, and that is not necessarily a quick process. I mean, I'm not justifying how long it took or anything, but it was probably a larger endeavor than most people think it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing too. I think part of the problem with the time, at least for me personally, was that a lot of the hype behind Grisaya has kind of faded after having read it. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna read Make You, I'm gonna read Raccoon when it comes out, but it hasn't been a priority for me. It might have been if they'd come out around the same time, but I mean, I was waiting just because there's more content cut from Make You than just like they remove sex scenes. There's like actual there's like side stories missing because they're doing a race here, or Joe Jokes gets entered. So I'm like, okay, I'd rather just read the original, but that ends up taking this long, and it's like, yeah, I mean, there's obviously going to be issues if they have to do things like changing engines, those sorts of things, but it's a little unfortunate that I know when Make You hit, certain people were just like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing ever. I was just like, oh neat, I can read that when I feel like it someday.
Are you sure the reason you're not waiting is because of those great Michiru H scenes that are coming out?
Knack, please.
But are you sure? Really? I don't hear you denying it.
Control Key is my best friend.
I see.
And then there were a few other kind of big releases like Takapo 3R and Sakura Agent, if you like that.
Big releases, yeah, sure. Maybe for the one of your reading threads.
Big
hey, I'm
release.
just
yeah.
Hey, I mean, people, those things sell, so
yeah,
it's
they do.
technically just saying.
So one other thing that I was actually interested in is that like 2 weeks ago, it was announced that the other two pieces of the Zero Escape series are coming to Steam for PC, which are 999 and Virtue's Last Reward, which I'm actually looking forward to because I have been meaning to read those games for ages, and while I do actually have a DS, one, getting it's region locked United States DS, and I'm in Germany now, which is a huge pain. And two, it's just one of those things where I tend to be at my computer far more than I use my handheld. So I'm actually really looking forward to having a chance to play that on PC finally.
Yeah, one cool thing that I read about that is 999, which actually didn't have any voice act. They're actually going to add voice acting to the PC port, which
cool.
As as far as I know, I mean. But that is one reason why I'm even though I know what happens. I've read all three, or read/played all three games. I might check it out again just for that reason, and because it's a good series. I definitely do recommend it for people who like the whole mystery, trapped in an area you don't know, and with
exactly.
gameplay puzzle stuff.
Yeah, it's I've read the whole thing, and it's pretty fantastic. I received a copy of it gift. And seeing games that were previously only console or handheld only moving into the PC world, I think it's going to do a lot of good things for VNs, especially the gameplay-oriented ones like 999 Virtue's Last Reward are.
Yeah.
So I think this is actually going to be a really positive thing, not only the visual novel community, but also the gaming community as well.
All right, that just about does it for visual novel-related news. Before we wrap up, though, Rallina has something for us.
All right, so one of the last things I want to do here is a little segment that I think is going to try to be something regular that we'll have new people on each time, which is a brief segment to recommend or shill a visual novel. As we talked about in the podcast, a lot of people reading come through recommendations. So the VN I would like to recommend is The House in Fata Morgana. Now, it's kind of hard to categorize and describe. It's a very interesting story. It really breaks away from a lot of traditional VN tropes. If you're looking for a high school setting, multiple route romance, you're not going to find that here. If you're looking for something a little more unique, something that it's not quite a mystery, but it has mystery elements to it, something where there's a lot of suspense and you're sort of working through a lot of these strange things going on at the same pace of the character, where you're in this sort of place, having that sort of same development. I think it does a lot of things very well. it tells a very interesting and in my opinion, quite powerful story without getting into too many spoilers there. But I think if you're looking for something well-written, engaging story, very human characters, and a little bit of mystery, then I think you should check out Fata Morgana, which you can find on Manga Gamer or Steam.
All right, so that about wraps it up for this episode. Thank you, everyone who has listened to this episode. I hope you enjoyed listening to us talk about English visual novels. Thank you, Nai, for being a guest and talking about your visual novel and various English visual novel community stuff with us. Thank you, Rallina and Nashi, for co-hosting this podcast with me, like working with you guys. If you currently like the BGM that's playing right now, stay tuned for updates from Nai, who can be found at Remote Studios on Twitter or at his website at remotestudios.com. The track that's playing is actually composed by Andy Han, who you may remember from Katawa Shoujo, and he's going to be composing for Nai's new visual novel, When the Shutter Stops. Be sure to tune in for our next episode, which will be talking about kinetic visual novels versus visual novels with choices. My name is Ange Time, and thank you for listening again, and I will see you all in the next episode.
Thanks for inviting me, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Nai, for coming on, and thank you, everyone, for listening.
Yep, thanks folks for listening, and see you all next time.